Hey, all, now that we have talked about finding the slope of lines, we're going to talk about how we can use that slope and some other information to write the equations of lines. We're going to write them today specifically in what we call slope-intercept form that looks like this. In slope-intercept form, the slope, much like it was when we were calculating slope of a line, is represented by the letter M. And the intercept that we're talking about is a y-intercept, and it's represented by this letter B. All points on a line have an x and a y, and so when we write the equation of a line, we're always going to have a y and an x. The thing that makes the line unique is its slope and its y-intercept, and we can use those and find those from equations or from graphs so that we can write the equations of the lines. So if I look at this line on the left, we have talked about how we can find the slope of that line. And let's talk today about how we can find the intercept. The intercept, or the y-intercept in particular, is the place where our line crosses this vertical y-axis. So if we look on this line where the blue line crosses it, it's right there. The y-intercept is a coordinate. Its x value is always going to be 0 because to get to this point, we don't go left or right. And then its y value is always going to be how high or how high above our origin or below our origin our intercept is. So here it's -1, so it's 1 below. So its y value is -1. Our slope-intercept form of a line is y equals mx plus b. So we can start building that by using our intercept. Our intercept is, we're going to use the y value of it is -1. So our equation is going to end with -1. And then we can find the slope. The way we find the slope, we can find like we did in the last lesson. I have one point already, my intercept, and I have another point right here. You could use any point that is on the line. So that point's on the line. That point is that point. We need to just use 2. Remember, I start by on the left and I count down and then to the right. So down, I go -1. To the right, I go +2. So the slope of this line is -1 over 2, and I have an equation for my line. Let's try that again. Here I have my intercept. The x value is always 0. The y value here is 1, 2, 3. And so that means when I start building my equation, b comes from the y value of my intercept, which is +3. So I do +3. I'm going to go find another point on my line. There's one. And I'm going to find my slope. I always start on the left and I go up or down. Here I have to go up 4 and I go right 1. So the slope of my line is 4 over 1. And we typically just write that as 4 when we're writing an equation. Let's do a couple more. I'm always going to start with y equals mx plus b. And then I'm going to go find my intercept here. My intercept is the origin, which is 0, 0. So when I'm starting to write my equation, b is the y value of my y-intercept, which is 0. So I can say +0. I'm going to find another point. There's a point. I count up 2, right 1. So my slope is 2 over 1. Typically, we'll just write that as 2. And then to clean this up, whenever we have a plus 0, we can get rid of that plus 0 and just write the equation of this line as y equals 2x. So if you ever see the equation of a line and there's nothing at the end of that, there's no plus or minus anything, that's because that line goes through the origin. One more here. Always start with y equals mx plus b. We're going to go find our intercept. It's right there. X value is always 0, and our y value here is -4. So that means that b is -4. So I can start building my equation. It's going to be -4 at the end. I'm going to go find another point on my line. I got to count down 1, that's -1. To the right, 3, that's +3. That means my slope is -1/3. And so I can just plug that in here. And I have the equation of my line. I can do the opposite thing. If I know the equation of the line, I can find out what its slope is, and I can find out where it crosses the y-axis just by looking at the slope-intercept form of that line. So as we've discussed, slope-intercept is y equals mx plus b. Slope is the number that is in front of the letter x. It's just that value that's in front of x. So I can find the slope of each of these lines. They're all in slope-intercept form. I can just go find what value is in front of x, and that will be my slope. So if I look here, my slope is -1/2. Number in front of x, my slope is -2. My slope is -2. My slope is 2/5. Slope, if we have our equation in this form where y is all by itself, so when y is all by itself, we have this in slope-intercept form, then the number or the value in front of x is our slope. The intercept is always created using that value at the end of the equation. So the x value of our intercept is always 0. So that first number in those coordinates is always 0. Our y-intercept is a point, and so it has coordinates. The y value is always that sign and then the number. So here our y value is +2. Here our y value is -5. Here our y value, well, there's nothing there, so our y value is 0. This goes through the origin. And here our y value is -1. And so we have the slope of our line, and we have the place where it crosses the y-axis, which we call the y-intercept. And so if we wanted to, we could go graph this thing by graphing the y-intercept and then using the slope to find more points. Sometimes we have special cases. We talked about the special cases in the last lesson. We talked about the slope. So here we have undefined slope when we have a vertical line. And then for this one, we have 0 slope. Slope is equal to 0, this horizontal line. And we have special ways to write the equations of those lines. We first look at the axis that the line crosses. So this vertical line only crosses the x-axis. That means there is no y-intercept. And so we can't write this equation the same way. It crosses the axis where x is equal to -1. And because of that, we write the equation of this line as x equals -1. So basically, we're going to find where does it cross the x-axis, and that gives us the equation. When we have this horizontal line, we do something similar. It crosses the y-axis only. It has a y-intercept. It crosses where y is equal to 3, and that's the equation of our line. This one's a little bit easier to see because if we use our slope-intercept form, we know that a horizontal line has 0 slope. We can see it crosses at an intercept that has a y value of 3. And so when we multiply 0 times x, that cancels and we get y equals 3. So this one's a little bit more straightforward if you just want to use the methods we used on the other ones. The vertical lines are different. It's a little trickier. For our vertical lines, we go find, hey, where does that cross the x-axis? That tells us our equation. So I want you to pause here and I want you to try these two. See if you can find the correct equation of the line. Then press play for the answers. So check your answers here. If you did get one or more of them wrong, that's totally fine. But please do ask for an explanation, and I will gladly talk to you about how to find the equation. If you got them both right or you got your questions answered, please move on to the practice. Take your time on those. And while you're working, if you do have any questions, please simply ask for help.